it's funny to think of like some of these areas where no one's doing that much. Like, isn't that an invitation? That should be a red carpet. Like, hey, if no one's talking about this, and yet we've got an environment for music to come out into the most oversaturated space that it has ever been, like, lean into the areas where people are too scared to talk.
Aussie hip-hop group The Herd were one of the headliners for the 20th anniversary edition of the Gumball Festival, held on Wonnarua Country in Lower Belford. We caught up with Toe-Fu and Urthboy just before their highly anticipated set.
It's my first time here with The Herd, but as Novocastrian, I think we've been coming here for maybe 12 years. So yeah, it's really nice to play to friends and family here at Dashville.
I really wanted you to take that, because then it would make it look like we're veterans here, you know? You've just done the time at Dashville.
I've done the time. It was like one of our first festivals here. My son was maybe 2 and urinated through the whole tent. And so, it's classic festival stuff for us. Yeah. Everyone here, there's so many amazing musicians here. And there's so many family and friends in the audience and so many friends and family backstage. So it's almost my most nervous gig, I reckon, because there's so many people I care about as opposed to playing somewhere where it's all strangers.
Yeah, I can't really speak too much because I've only been here for a little bit, but I think you automatically pick up on an energy when you walk into a space like this, and definitely get a really good feeling. And yeah, you see homemade things, you see people who are clearly connected to the organisers and friends of organisers, and automatically it changes the way that you engage with the space. Like, it's not a corporate, there's not, brand activations, and it's just not that same level of corporate presence in the music festival. So I think that they always are more fun to walk into. They always feel more welcoming. You always feel like, okay, we're here together. Like, we're here to have some fun. It's less about just being a bunch of artists or rock stars or whatever, just trying to, work out how to carry yourself in like that music space. Yeah.
Although The Herd were releasing politically charged music in the early noughties, most of the issues they were shedding light on 20 years ago are just as poignant in 2025.
I mean, it's sad that most of The Herd songs are still relevant at the moment, and as we're aware, there's an election coming up, and so there's a new song which we've collaborated with a couple of amazing artists called Soul of My Soul, and it's about Palestine and the conflict over there, and then that segues into another song which is about conflict around the world. There's a climate change song. It's like, unfortunately, they're all still relevant. It's just insert new name.
Yeah, it's funny to think about it. In some ways, when we were making some of that music, it wasn't really radical at the time. Some of it may have been different to a lot of the other music that was being produced in Australia, but it's not that radical. But you watch it's a strange sensation to watch a decade or even 2 decades pass and reflect and say, we actually haven't really progressed really any further than what we were talking about 20 years ago. So we pull these songs out in the odd rehearsal that we do, and it doesn't feel like they've dated. I mean, stylistically is one thing, but thematically and the lyrics that we're talking about, it's crazy to sort of think how slow things are and how much faster they need to be. And I think that's the thing, is that you can catastrophize because that regression feels so against all of your instincts. Like, you think that things are just going to progress and there'll be some sort of linear path that everyone just accumulates knowledge, we learn from experience, and we make better decisions. But it just doesn't work like that, and I think that sometimes it leaves a lot of people who do invest a lot of their hope in that progression to despair about it. But I think it's also really important to remember that there has been a lot of really important changes, and there has been a lot of attitude, like the evolution of a lot of attitudes in the community around some of these conversations, like, Indigenous history, and I guess even just, thinking about how the Australian public has a conversation around Jan 26. I mean, 20 years ago, that's not even a conversation that the country would have been capable of having. So I think there are things that do improve, and I think a lot of the things that I look to as being inspiring are First Nations leading that charge. So we've seen a lot of musicians come out and be really staunch, and a lot of young people following these artists and saying, you know what, I really love these songs. I am moved by these songs. These songs make sense to me. Oh, I'm starting to understand why there is that anger and that frustration and that kind of dissatisfaction with where we're at in the country. And I think that's how things sometimes do change. And I don't think art, sorry, I'm rambling, but I don't think art always has that power. I think it has to happen in the community first. But I do look at a lot of these artists that have actually come out and just said, fuck that, we are not taking any of this shit anymore. And they have changed the game. And that's just one area, right? Like, there's so many different spaces in our community where you do see improvements, and it's easy to forget them because it sometimes feels like the things that make us despair are just so much louder in our minds and in social media, especially the way that technology has changed the way that we communicate. But yeah, that was a long answer.
I think music has always had that special, art has always had that special thing, space of being able to make sense of the internal and external worlds. And, since humans were first on this earth, it's always been that. And I think it's a real privilege to be able to be in that art space, whether it be music or sculpture or painting or whatever. It's, it helps us make sense of the world. And, seeing so many young bands here also using that. I'm a youth worker, and so, encouraging people to use any art form you can to make sense of internal, external conflicts. And, it's a real pleasure.
Yeah, I think that music, it's exactly right. Like, music has a space in all of the different parts on the spectrum of like our lives, right? And the good bits, the bad bits, whatever. And sometimes you get in these conversations about what music's supposed to do. And I think from my experience with our political music, I've realized that what we do doesn't really matter, but when we soundtrack what people are already doing, like youth workers, really, it's social workers, like some of the best people, some of the glue that is undervalued in our society, right? But the work that they're doing is uncelebrated in the same way that maybe we'll write a song and hopefully kind of somehow it supports the real work that's being done. And that's what I think is the biggest blessing of being in a band like The Herd, where we do talk about politics, is that all we're really doing is hopefully supporting and galvanizing people who are out there and doing the stuff that doesn't get broadcast to lots of people. But I often think like, it's nice that there's a lot of escapism music for people just to kind of get away from all of the heaviness of life. Like that there's a really important role that plays. But I think that quite often that's the only thing that really rises to the surface, and the more artists that actually reflect in the times, especially in times like these, fuck me dead, the times that we are in right now are they're crying out for artists to have guts and to speak honestly and just get scared. Like, do stuff that makes you scared, because that's the edge. And the edge is where a lot of artists need to take a lot of the people who are doing the real work, because they're out on the edge already, and they need to have that music with them. I think that's the role that we play and a lot of other artists play. The experience from doing Soul of My Soul last year, where we have an industry that is really uncomfortable with talking about this. We're in the arts, right? And the arts is so proud of being progressive, and the arts is so proud of like being, creating safe spaces and like talking about equality and LGBTQI issues and First Nations injustice and racism. But Palestine, this is not an area where anyone's comfortable in our arts community, and that's like a window, and it just says, that's dangerous. Like, people are going to censor you. All the tech companies are already censoring you. You can't put any promotion there. There's no way you can get that out into the audience because it's already kind of rigged against you, right? That's a pretty interesting space, because if all of the arts community who normally sitting there getting out their black squares to talk about Black Lives Matter are too frightened to talk about this. What the hell? Like that's a window, you know? And I being involved in that song and working with Serene and working with Big Rigs and working with Mo, like Palestinian artists who were like leading us and they were showing us what this song was supposed to do. And we saw the response from some of the biggest guys in the industry who they work behind the scenes. They work quietly and they get people fired and they clamp down on artists. You know, that to me was like far out. We're on the right track here. We need to do more of it. There has to be more of this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think once you're getting scared and, like you said, ruffling those feathers, it's just like, all right, cool, this is, that's the right path once it starts making people uncomfortable in those sorts of positions.
Yeah. There's so much music out there. I mean, most artists who are really committed to what they're doing, one of the biggest challenges is visibility. Like, there's just such a saturation and overproduction of just everything. There's just an overproduction of everything. And it's funny to think of, like, some of these areas where no one's doing that much. Like, isn't that an invitation? That should be a red carpet. Like, hey, if no one's talking about this, and yet we've got an environment for music to come out into the most oversaturated space that it has ever been, like, lean into the areas where people are too scared to talk. Like, I mean, if you care about it.
And as Tim said, we haven't been gigging that much lately, and being able to have that format back again for a little bit is really nice. To be backstage, to be, on the road, some of those things that sometimes get a bit tiresome over a while, but when it's such a privileged position to be in, to be able to hang out with your mates, and it's like hanging out with your mates and cooking, it's hanging out with your mates and doing music. It's exactly the same. You make music, you eat music. It's amazing.
It is. I mean, when we join in person, it is different, and I think, without wanting to get too philosophical on about it, like, so much of our lives are in digital spaces now, and just the idea of being together with people, it's really redeeming. And I think when there's lots of question marks around, like, how we communicate with each other as people, when you are in, like, having a real experience with someone and you have real connection, I think it kind of packs a bit of the tension that accumulates in our bodies with, like, trying to exist in digital spaces. It just helps remind us that we're human. And I think when you're human, maybe you feel like you've got more potential to deal with all the hectic shit out there, I think getting back to that is good. Yeah.
It was such a privilege to chat with the legends from the Herd. If you want to see more action from the Gumball 2025, be sure to follow and subscribe at Newcastle Live.